This story is from 2019. The person was 13 years old at the time, and they say they still remember it like it was yesterday. Probably has something to do with the trauma. I was bored at home alone. I FaceTimed my best friend, who lives in the apartment building next to mine, and asked him if he wanted to join me for a walk around the neighborhood. He wasn't there. He was on his way back home from school, which is understandable because it was a Thursday afternoon. There's a jogging circuit near my house that I like to frequent. It's like 500 meters away. Due to my massive boredom, I put on my sports clothes, which is just a basic t-shirt and some shorts. Now, remember this detail. The shorts have no pockets. I then was headed with my music, vibing to the circuit. Arriving there, it was surprisingly not that empty, around 8 to 10 people in that 15-kilometer circuit. I started walking for a bit and then ran for a couple of kilometers and then laid down in the grass. I noticed 2 guys on a motorcycle going back and forth. I didn't care that much since I was FaceTiming my 2 best friends. It was getting pretty late. It was around 6 p.m. and I was exhausted. I walked home, but I took another path that's kind of a shortcut. I had to walk through an empty, big street with buildings and construction, and I've taken that same path many times before with no problems, by the way. I had a feeling that someone was watching me and following me. I turned around and noticed that the same 2 guys on that motorcycle were heading towards me. I whispered to my friends on FaceTime that something weird is happening and they have to cut their mics and focus on me. The guys came by and one of them asked me where the nearest barber shop was. Out of just pure stress, I gave them some random location. While the rider of the bike asked me about the barber shop, my right eye twitched and unfocused. I do have this ability and it happens every now and then, but I was still able to see with it. I saw in the bike's rearview mirror that the other guy was trying to look at where my phone was, which was between my shorts and my belly because I had no pockets and I had my headphones on. I was freaking out. Time was starting to slow down. Seconds felt like hours and I couldn't feel my legs anymore. They went on, but with a slow speed. It was like they were planning a backup plan. I now had 3 options. Option 1, there was a taxi guy fixing his car. I could have went to him and explained the situation, but my gut said that if they noticed me and came back and maybe they would do what they planned to do. Option 2 was to stop a random car and hop in, then explain the situation. My gut said no. What if the car was locked? Plus, the guys would have noticed that I knew that they were planning to do something and came after me after the random car went on. Or option 3, and this is the one that I chose, run in the opposite direction into the traffic and take the path that I came in from. I instinctively ran for 5 minutes straight. I couldn't do it anymore, and I entered a field and started running again towards some slums. I looked back and I saw the guys coming after me into the field, and one of them was shouting, "Just stop. We just want to know where the barber shop is." There's one thing about me, and that it's I always trust my gut. And my gut said, no, run as fast as you can or you will die today. And that's what I did. I ran between the slums and I kept running until I arrived near my best friend's house, who I was still FaceTiming with. I told him to come downstairs right away, and I laid down in the parking lot. He came and was freaked out because he knew something bad was happening, but didn't know what since I didn't give him any exact information. My face turned yellow and I threw up. I couldn't feel my legs or my arms anymore. He walked me to my house and I laid down, and from that moment, I don't remember anything. I only remember me waking up the following day with bruises on my legs due to me sprinting away in a field full of pikes. When I was 17 years old, about 3 years ago, I was accustomed to being in horrible situations as all I had was my mother and she couldn't hold down a job for long because she had her own issues to tackle, and so I grew up and we stayed in and out of roommates' houses. We never really had our own place to stay, except twice, but that didn't last long either, and we would be forced into a new environment with the snap of a finger. So when I was 17, we're led into a situation where we're going to be homeless again, and I was used to it at this point, as I had slept in the street more than I'd like. The day comes when we have to leave our roommate's house, and my mom is able to stay at her boyfriend's trailer. I had nowhere to go as I had no friends at this point because I'd halted my friendships because they were bad for my health and mental state and were overall toxic. My mom offered me to go with her, but I didn't want to feel as if I was getting between my mom and her boyfriend. That was kind of weird. Plus, I'm used to the street, and I didn't think it was as bad as it was at the time. So here we are. I get dropped off at a McDonald's, and I eat some burgers before I go off into the streets once more. Eventually, the sun fled, and darkness was all that remained, and so I looked for a place to sleep for the night. I went into many places that night trying to sleep, but none of them were working because it was either too hot, or the lights were too bright, or the mosquitoes were biting me. That's when I remember a house that I used to go into to chill in. This house was under construction and nearly finished, so the doors all shut and the windows were all settled so there were no mosquitoes. I go through the back like always and I make my way upstairs. Eventually, I settled in the bathroom because there's less debris on the floor. So I lay there and I try to sleep. Eventually, I hear some sounds downstairs, but I didn't think anything of it. I figured it was just the door that I came through swinging open and closed or something. Eventually, after laying there for maybe an hour, I open up my phone and I look at my old photos of my life, thinking about just how messed up it was that I got to this point and how I lost everything. The noises were still happening this entire time, but I paid no mind to it. Eventually, for whatever reason, I get up and I go to sit down on the back porch because I just couldn't sleep. I make my way downstairs and out the back door to the porch. I'm messing around on my phone for maybe 5 minutes when it happens. I see movement to my left from the back door that I just exited from. I glance over and time itself freezes. At first, I think that it's just an illusion, but I was in fact very wrong. I see a man, shrouded in darkness, peering past the wall inside to gaze at me. The lower half of his figure was behind the wall entirely, and I couldn't see anything but his upper half. The rest of his body was leaning to the left, peeking behind this wall, almost like the man was trying not to let me see his full body, as it would make his presence known. The man was a pure black silhouette, and I couldn't make out any features. After noticing him, I just sat there and stared at him for what seemed like forever, but was probably only a minute or two. I expected him to come outside and talk to me because I normally talked to a lot of homeless people, and I thought that the man was just homeless. He didn't come outside though. He hadn't moved at all, actually. He was as still as a statue, as quiet as a mouse. Maybe if I hadn't noticed him, he would have stared at me the entire time. I eventually, after staring at him, got up, got my bicycle, and I made my way out of the property. As I'm walking out of the master backyard, I peer into the window that's next to the door that I saw the man in. The moonlight revealed the man was still there, only now he was watching me walk out of the property. I could tell because the moonlight revealed the top of the man's head, and I saw his left eye gazing at me. He was a white male who was very tall and had a jacket of some kind on. I couldn't make out many details because he was still cloaked in darkness. After seeing this, I just moved a little faster to get out of there. I got to the front of the house on the street and I looked inside to see if I could see him again, but I couldn't. I got on my bicycle, I waved goodbye to the house because I figured the man was still watching me, and then I rode away. For the rest of the night, I still couldn't sleep. I tried 2 different spots, but both were no luck. I know I didn't have a crazy chase or fight to the death or anything, but this was real life and it's not the same as the movies or the books. I don't know what the man was doing in there. I assume he was trying to sleep like I was, but the way he was staring at me was very unnerving. It makes me wonder how long the man was in the house for and what would have happened if I actually fell asleep. Would he have stared at me the whole time while I was asleep, completely blinded to his presence? Or did he have other intentions? I'll never know, but now I don't go into houses like that anymore at all after this experience. I never want to meet the man shrouded in darkness ever again. This story happened a while ago, but it still messes with my mind. And side note, I live in a quiet countryside where usually nothing happens. I'm an 18-year-old girl who can easily walk around my hometown alone without even being scared because it's really safe here. There's basically no crime. So, as usual, me and my dog went for a walk one evening. It was nice weather outside, so I decided to go for a nearby field. I usually let my dog out of her leash there, so it was fun for both of us. She's a nice dog and always comes when I call for her. We get to the field and everything is going really well and nothing seems off, except I have this kind of odd feeling in my gut that I never usually have. The last time that I had this feeling, I was 8 years old and we were driving at night with my family. I had the same feeling then and I told my parents, "I feel like something is wrong, you should be careful." I said something like that. They slowed down because I was oddly serious at the moment, and just a minute later, a deer came out of nowhere and we would have crushed it had we been going the same speed as we were a minute before. We were all shocked and my mom thanked me. I still remember it like it was yesterday. However, in the field, now 10 years later, I get the same gut feeling. Whatever, I think, and I keep going, just completely ignoring it. We roll around the fields and a nearby forest until the sun starts to set. I put my dog back to her leash and decide to leave from one of the tiny paths that go through the small forest. It's the quickest way back home. It's not a popular way to go, but it's quick. As I'm walking along that path, I suddenly spot a silhouette in the end of the road just before the forest starts. I think nothing of it at this point and I just keep walking. But after a little while, I have a strong gut feeling and I stare at the silhouette. It's then that I noticed the silhouette is staring at me without moving. I think that maybe they're just waiting for someone because at first the silhouette looked like a child's. But as I got closer, I noticed that it wasn't a child, but a grown man who was sitting on a child's bicycle. It was a blue and green boy's bicycle. His legs were way too long for it, and his whole body looked like he was forcing himself to ride it. It was a really unsettling sight. And still, my dumbass didn't want to turn around and have a couple of kilometers waste of time. And even though it was creepy looking, I still thought, maybe he's waiting for someone that's just coming my way. But every step I take, he follows me with intense expression. I'm only like 20 meters away from him now, and then he starts to do weird jumps on his bike, smiling the ugliest and most disturbing smile I've ever seen, just staring at me with those wide eyes. He kind of looks like he was expecting something and is so excited about it that he needs to jump. He looks like he's in his 50s maybe, very long and thin legs and arms, bald and that creepy, unsettling smile. That's when my alarm bells start going off. I glanced behind me and no one was there. It was just me, an 18-year-old small girl with her fluffy dog. I turn around a 180 and I start to jog back from where I came from, just in case. I glanced at him and I sighed in relief when I noticed he wasn't following me. I thought that maybe he wasn't waiting for me after all and called myself stupid and a scaredy cat. But boy, I was so wrong. My adrenaline starts to slow down again as I'm in the middle of the fields and I see no sign of him following me. I let my dog out of her leash again and she starts to run around. I'm nearly at the end of the field. At this point, I only have 1 kilometer and a forest part before I get to my house after the field part. When my dog spots a rabbit or deer or some interesting thing and flies towards it. I panic because she's never done that before, and I yell for her. I yell plenty of times for her loudly, and finally she comes back. I'm relieved that nothing happened to her, but as soon as I put her back on her leash, I notice something out of the corner of my eye. The freaking bald, long legs dude is biking towards me. He's not looking at the ground when he bikes, he's looking at me. Now, a freak out wasn't enough to express my feeling in the moment. I've never seen a human who looks so crazy. More than crazy, actually. What surprised me the most was that he was biking through a field, and I can tell you that it's not an easy field to walk in sometimes. It has muddy ponds that you need to jump over, but that psycho just biked through all of them. He was struggling a lot to bike there, but somehow managed to still do it. I didn't watch for another second behind me because I just started running. I ran so freaking full speed, and I have asthma by the way, that I saw black and I nearly collapsed. My lungs hurt so bad that I thought I was dying, but the adrenaline kept my blood running and my legs too. Once, I glanced behind me and he was there. He was struggling badly to keep up his full speed on the grounds with that ugly white smile and that way too little bike. After that, I just ran like crazy until I found a house. I hid in their yard without even minding that I was in someone else's yard. It didn't matter to me in that moment at all. I waited a while with my breathing stuck in my throat, but he never came. I was planning to yell as loudly as I could if he found me, but he never did. At some point, the adrenaline started leaving my system and I left my hiding spot. I ran again until I reached an area that had multiple people in their yard, so I would have help if I saw him again, but I didn't. I typed 911 into my phone, but I couldn't bring myself to make the call, mostly because I had no proof and didn't want my parents to find out because they were overprotective, so I probably wouldn't be able to leave my house anymore. I've been paranoid after this incident, and my dog was frightened too. I guess she noticed something was really off as well. I swear to God that I will always listen to my gut when it's telling me something from now on. I'm still scared of him. I've expected to randomly spot him in some area and imagine what he might do to me. I can't forget his awful smile. I feel like he's gonna jump at my window one night and do what he wants to me. I feel paranoid and helpless, and I'm still thinking about calling the police. The whole thing lasted no more than 18 minutes, which is about how long this video is. You should watch another one.